Hey guys, welcome back to the Don't Settle Squad podcast, episode 49, Why You Don't Get Great Mobility Progress on Your Own. This episode covers how we have the information but we struggle with the implementation, and two things that you need to work on for great progress: understanding and intent. So this episode, inspired by the most recent client sign up to the Physical Freedom Program. So Adrian, we had the consultation call last week and last week, with the consultation call last week, and he started this week. But in the first session, when I'm going through the program with him, going through the education and the program, and he has seen some of the exercises before. So that's normal enough, that when clients start, they might say, oh, I've seen this exercise or that exercise out of the program that I'm giving them starting off. And then when we go through it in detail, when we go through the understanding of the exercise, what we're trying to do, and then the intent that he's going to have when he's doing this for the sets and the reps each week going forward for the few weeks on that program, they're always like, okay, this is making a lot more sense. This is why I wasn't really getting much progress before, because I've done these before for a few weeks. I saw them on Instagram, saw them on YouTube, whatever, was trying them, but they weren't really working for me. And I remember that, because that was me as well, trying things on YouTube, trying things on Instagram years ago, and just not really getting progress with them. And then you start to wonder, maybe the problem is my body, like the experts are saying, and spiraling down to settling. So that was the inspiration for this, and that's why I'm making this episode, because the main thing missing for people, like I said, is their understanding of their own body and of the exercises that they're trying to do, and then the intent behind them. So we'll cover those 2 points today. So to go straight into the understanding, like I said in the intro, people have the information but struggle with the implementation. So I said this analogy and Adrian was laughing, but like someone told it to me years ago. We all actually have the information. I have no secret exercises here that are going to fix you or anything like that. A lot of guys in this industry will be using similar exercises. So like it's no secret, and the ones that are pretending they do have this secret exercise, that's a major red flag. So the reality is the information is out there. Like the exercises are pretty much all on Instagram or YouTube or wherever. So you have that information of the exercise, but the implementation is what's the tough part. And the analogy that I was giving him was like, there's information out there on how to build rockets. Are me and you going to build them? We're not. Why? Because the implementation, like we don't know what to do with that information. And it's the same thing here. We just like, when you get into this, you don't know how your body works, you don't know all the mechanisms of the body, and you don't know how these exercises work either. So how are you going to implement it? Like, you're not. And I was explaining as well, like, coaches know this. Like, we know this. Why do you think coaches put these exercises online? Like, if every person out there, like Adrian, would be able to implement this exercise and get great progress on his body, that coach wouldn't make any money, would he? And then he wouldn't be a coach. So, like, coaches know this. We know that people can't really implement them themselves because we've been through the journey and we tried it and it doesn't work. So you might get little bits of progress here and there. Maybe the odd time, if you're learning enough about the body on the side, you might get some good progress, but the vast majority of people won't. And as I said, coaches know this. That's why they share those things, so that you'll get a little bit of progress and hopefully see, oh, this might actually work, and then maybe you might buy their program or sign up to their one-to-one coaching. So you won't get that progress without the understanding, and then the intent comes from the understanding, which we'll get to in point 2. So to finish off on that, like the deeper understanding comes from being coached, supported and guided through it from someone who has been there. So that's the main thing. You'll get to that stage where you understand it. As I said, I've walked this path years ago. Was it nearly 6 or 7 years ago at this stage, where my first coach did the same for me and walked me through these exercises, and then I was like, oh, holy Lord, this feels completely different than when I was trying these on my own. And like a simple example, one you've probably seen, if the explanation here isn't making sense, don't worry, but the hip 90-90 position, like most people have seen it. So we're sitting on the floor. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're sitting on the floor, your front leg is out at 90 degrees, and then the back leg is out at 90 degrees as well. So in that 90-90 position. And there's loads of different exercises from there, and you don't have to use that position, but it's an easy position for most people to use because it doesn't need any equipment and you can do it from home. So in that, in the assessment I'd given him, I was getting him to do some internal and external rotations. And for example, the one where he's lifting up his knee, most people bend their spine and lift up their knee like that. And they're kind of wondering, this isn't really that tough. But then through simple understanding of You need to straighten your spine, keep the spine straight, so you're going to get the hip to do the work. If you need to sit on a cushion or something to raise your hips to sit straight, do that. And use your hands for a bit of balance. So you want to keep the spine perfectly straight, like chest up, Superman chest, looking forward, no bending of the spine like this. And now you'll find the knee barely comes up off the ground at all, but you really feel it in the hip, which is what we want here. And like even just, that's a simple example. Once you do it like that, you're like, holy fuck. This is so tough. And then things are starting to make sense. Oh, I've hip pain for years, back pain for years. Like Adrian was 10 years of back pain, is a bulging disc now as well. But even that one was nearly impossible for him. And I've been there as well where couldn't even do those exercises. And now I'm starting to think, okay, I can't move my hip simply on the floor like a child would. Like there's no weights or anything here involved. I just can't move my hip. And I'm wondering why I'm getting like back pain, hip pain when I try and go to the gym or do jiu-jitsu. It's like, yeah, this is starting to make sense. So, yeah, look, that deep understanding, it comes from being coached and supported through it. So second point then on the intent. This is coming from what I call principles of progress. So through my whole, mobility journey 7 years ago, once I overcame the chronic pain and injury, when I was told that it was going to be impossible and all this, I reflected on it years later because, look, this path was all random. I didn't know where it was going to lead. I didn't know if it was going to work, if I was going to get out of it. But when I did and I looked back and analysed the whole thing, like, why did this actually work? There must be some nuggets of wisdom in there because, yeah, the kind of cards were stacked against me here. So the 5 ones that I keep preaching on Instagram, you probably know them at this stage if you're following me there. Things like playing the long game, checking the ego, training smart, chasing the small gains, consistency and intent. So that's number 5. And for those, if you're hitting those things, progress is going to be inevitable. And usually when I get stuck in my own life and I'm not making progress, I have a quick look at them and I'm like, yeah, there's one or more of those that I'm not doing. So we'll just talk about the consistency and intent, which is number 5. What I figured out there was, and like this is nothing groundbreaking, but for me, a lot of people will preach about consistency, but it's not just about consistency, because if you're consistent with no intent, like you're showing up all the time to do the work, but then when you're there, you're like that guy, like, oh yeah, there's my hip one done, you're on your phone, oh yeah, there's my shoulder exercise done, yeah, and then you're still like weeks, months later, like, this isn't really working, I'm not really getting progress. You see what I'm saying? It's because you have no intent behind what you're doing, and intent drives adaptation, which we'll get to in a second. So being very consistent with no intent, not really going to work. And if you flip that the other way around, if you're not consistent, you show up once in a blue moon with laser focus intent, doing the mobility drills properly, and you're like, oh, this is tough, I must be doing good work here. But then like you drop off for a month and you come back, you're still not going to get progress either. It's the same for the gym. It's like doing a great bench press session, but you do it once every 2 months. Are you going to get much progress? No. So that's why one without the other doesn't work, but both of them together, that's fucking powerful. When you have consistency and intent, and obviously you need a few other things, but just for this episode, when you have the consistency and intent, that's when you're going to start to get progress, because you're showing up to do the work, and when you're there, the phone is away, you're focusing on what you're actually doing, and you're listening to the cues from the understanding of what I've given the clients, and you're really working on what you're meant to be working on, stressing the parts of the body that we need to make the changes that you want to get more physical freedom for sport and life. So that's why, the intent is key. And to go into that, the intent drives adaptation. So even just from a scientific point of view, from how the brain works, from evolution, the brain is goal focused. So if we think back in the hunter-gatherer days, if I'm a hunter-gatherer, I have a spear here, I have to throw it at this animal. My brain doesn't go lift up my arm to 90 degrees, retract my scapula, bring my shoulder into extension, like none of this. It's like, see that thing over there, throw this at it, and your brain figures out the movement pattern to do it over time. And it's doing this ever since we're learning to walk as a baby. The goal is just move forward, and we're falling, and the brain is figuring out like what movement pattern is going to complete this goal for me. And the brain is so adaptable. We're the most adaptable species on the planet. We have an episode on that somewhere on the channel. The brain will figure it out. So the brain is just goal focused for survival. It'll figure out whatever it needs to complete that goal, because that's what you need to survive. So it's goal focused, it's intent focused. That's what drives the adaptation. So the most adaptation will happen when you're intensely focused on something. Like, just think about it. Who's going to survive? The person who intently focuses on a task to complete it, or the one who's like not really bothered? Like, I don't know, imagine we to learn how to climb this wall because some predators, well, no, there wouldn't be a wall, whether if they're climbing a tree because there's some predators coming, and if one guy's like, oh yeah, maybe put my hand here, whatever, but like the guy who's really trying to figure it out, he's gonna learn it a lot quicker. So that's just key, that intent drives adaptation for your body, but also for life as well. Like you could bring it to any example. I use car examples a lot because usually everyone can drive or knows how to drive, but it's the same thing. Imagine you're in the driving lessons, and he's showing you how to use the gear stick, like the clutch and the gear stick. If you're not really paying attention to how this fits into the overall thing, like when you're on the accelerator, you have to press the clutch to change the gear and then you go back on the accelerator. If you're not like intently focusing on how does this actually fit into the whole operation here of driving the car, it's not going to work, is it? If you just, oh yeah, the gears, I know I just need to press the clutch and move the gears around, and you weren't like intently focused on how that fits in with the accelerator, like it's not going to work. So you can see just for every part of life, the intent is key. If we're just showing up, if we're just being consistent but we've no intent, we're just not going to get the progress that we want. And the last point I had there is, as you can see, to actually have that intent, what do you need? You need the understanding, which is why that's point one. Like even just for the car example there, how are you going to have the intent to link those together if you don't actually know what the gear stick does or what the clutch does or how it links together? So that's why I'm always preaching, like, we need a base level of education for anything in life. We'll never get long-term progress in anything, from driving a car to learn how to control your own body, get more physical freedom, without knowing a few of the basics. So I think we might finish with that. And yeah, just as I'm saying at the very end here, which you'll figure it out by now, like with the right understanding and intent, progress is going to be inevitable in time. We'll never know exactly how it's going to go because there's lots of other factors coming in there based on people's injury history, their body types, length of limbs, etc. But progress is going to be inevitable if you're following that. So to finish off then, so we'll talk a little bit about the Physical Freedom Program membership. So as I said last week, this is what I'm building now and what I'm going to be focusing on next year. So for the last 5 years, I've mainly focused on the one-to-one coaching Physical Freedom Program, just like with the Adrian example there. But now I'm going to be putting this into a membership format. So it's going to be all the education and programs from the one-to-one coaching into a cheaper membership platform that everyone can access. And it's going to start off with €22 a month on the launch in December, and the price is going to increase up towards €50 then afterwards in January. And those who join in December, you'll keep that lower monthly price forever. Okay, so that's the little deal for you guys, watching the podcast or listening to the podcast and following the newsletter and this kind of stuff. That's the deal you'll get. So if you sign up in December, you'll keep the €22 a month going forward. And for the 6 sections in there, with the instructions at the start just to show you how to use the membership, we've Physical Freedom Foundations, the education, and then Physical Freedom Foundations, the program. So every client I get in, they start off on certain basics. Doesn't matter who they are. People training for the Olympics or grannies just learning how to walk again after twisting their ankle. They start in the same place, learning the basics. Then after 1 to 3 months, depending on how quick they progress, then I go on to sport-specific programs. If it's field sports and running, soccer, Gaelic, hurling, whatever, maybe it's martial arts, maybe it's more recreational stuff like golf or hiking or whatever. So that's the sport-specific programs, which comes after. And then I also have strength and conditioning programs in there as well. So I'm also an S&C coach, which, I suppose I talk more about the physical freedom in general, the rehab part, because that's more closer to my heart, we'll say. But I've gone on to hit elite strength levels myself and train people through that too. So I'm going to have all the strength and conditioning programs in there as well, from basic up to elite. And that's what I was working on this week. So even to flick over, I was doing it this morning. Yeah, I'm literally just on that now, building the basic S&C programs out. And I just have the doc here. Yeah, so I have instructions and education for the strength, and then starting strength program, that's the basic one, and then instructions and education for the cardio, and then cardio condensed program, which is the basic one. And as you can see there, there's little bits of education for each one that'll help you so much. It's just like strength training principles, cardio principles, that once you know, you can get started yourself on the basic programs. And yeah, programs there that I pretty much start most people on, and a similar one that I started on kind of 5 or 6 years ago on my strength training journey. So again, like what I've talked about in this podcast today fits in here too, like the understanding and the intent, which you'll get from the instructions and education for the strength and then for the cardio. That's the main difference. Like I remember in the gym, I could never do anything impressive in the gym. I was like a stick man. Couldn't, squat more than 60 kg past hip level because of my hip and back pain and like trying chin-ups and stuff. I never got more than like 6 or 7. I remember I could never do 10. I could never get 10, and that's over years and years in the gym through college and stuff. Once I got coached, understood all these things, in 5 years up to 2.5 kg assisted one arm chin-ups, got handstand push-up, 1.5 astrogast bodyweight squat, doing the front splits, got handstand push-up, yeah. And like just all these things I thought were impossible for me because I was never, a strong guy. And look, on the other side, put on 8 kg of muscle as well, just kind of as a byproduct. So look, that's the journey I'm going to get you started on as well. Whenever you reach that point, this membership is the whole lot. It's all the way from crippled or chronic pain and injury up to overcoming that, to getting back to your sport, having the mobility for your specific sport. And then if you want, you're at this stage where you can actually start the S&C training now too, just for your own life and also to help with sport too. So look, man, I'm pumped. It's everything in there, everything that you could want. So that's everything. We're finished then. So for the follow, contact guidedandsettle@gmail.com, or else send me DM on Instagram. I'll be on there every day answering questions. And the website is up there as well if you want to look more into the one-to-one coaching or the newsletters, and documentaries up there as well. That'll be first pinned post on my Instagram and also on the website if you're listening to this for the first time, kind of being like, yeah, what's all the Guided and Settle about? So that's it. Just don't settle, live true to yourself. We'll talk to you next week.